The opposition leader is preparing to unveil a streamlined policy pitch at the ALP National Conference. Joining me live now is former Labor Senator Stephen Conroy. Stephen, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Bill Shorten's pitch was, 300 pages? This is looks like a snip at 100 pages. That's all part of the point, right? To make things a bit easier to understand.
No, absolutely. I mean, Labor has to have a very refined down and very simple message going into this next election. And there's been a lot of policy work. People often underestimate how much work goes in by a lot of people behind the scenes on the policy platform. But there's been a great camaraderie in the team that's been putting together the document. And so they've pared it down, thinned it out, got it back to some really basic core messages.
Yeah, but it's virtual. It's not going to have the showbiz and the firepower and the fireworks that are usually around for these sorts of things. I mean, you're going to have a bit of a battle on your hands to sell your message when it might not be terribly exciting.
Well, look, the environment that Albo's faced since he became leader has just been diabolical when it comes to trying to sell any message. First you had the bushfires, and then you've had COVID, and now you can't even hold the national conference in the traditional manner. And that's been challenging. But you just got to look at the hard yards that Albo's been putting in terms of just plugging away, trying to hold the government to account for its botched vaccine rollout. It didn't get enough vaccines early. So Albo has been tough on areas around COVID, but been supportive in areas around COVID. So I think he's found that right message. But yes, it is disappointing. A virtual conference misses the colour, the movement, the often late nights while you're negotiating a platform document or an amendment that's come in at the last minute, and you've got to make sure that it's not going to allow you to be driven off message. Crafting those words, what the ALP conference is all about, to ensure that the leader, and in this case Albo, has the best possible chance using that platform to sell his message.
One of his messages has already gone out. I was just talking to Joel Fitzgibbon about this. The $15 billion manufacturing plan to boost manufacturing jobs in Australia. The issue with this is going to be the cost to employ staff in Australia, right? It's too expensive. That's why a lot of these factories end up moving overseas. So very difficult to reverse that because no one's going to want to work cheaply.
Well, look, what we've seen is the supply chain issues that have been thrown up by COVID. You can't just make the simple decision, let's manufacture it in China, let's manufacture it in India, let's manufacture it in Bangladesh. You can't have that luxury anymore. What the COVID pandemic has shown is that Australia has got a very soft underbelly in its ability to look after itself in moments of crisis. Even countries you would expect to honour legal contracts like the EU have stopped the flow of the vaccine to Australia. That is a diabolical situation. And that's just one example. And there are many examples like that. So Australia has to build its manufacturing base. Albo is absolutely spot on this one. And the country has to just say to all those hardline right-wing economists who say, look, it's cheaper to build it in China, send it offshore. That trend, I think Albo is sending the message, is over. And Australia has to be resilient so that it can look after itself in circumstances like a global pandemic.
Well, I mean, one of his examples is about lithium, right? So we usually export the lithium that it comes from Australia, but instead of using it here, we're buying the batteries. So you'd be basically cutting out a few middlemen if you could do that.
Absolutely, and that's what Australia has to look at. Those opportunities, whether it's lithium batteries, whether it's electric cars. There are people who want to build electric cars in Australia and are being frustrated because people just say, no, Australia can't build cars. There's no reason we can't build cars. And in this new environment, we have to have manufacturing capability to support our defence industries particularly. We've got to have supply chains in vaccines and other pharmaceuticals that we're not relying on other countries to supply. These are fantastic examples of why Albo is on the right track.
Okay, let's just talk briefly and finally at Queensland. There is a few tense words that are being exchanged between the Premier and the Health Minister, Greg Hunt. It's all about low vaccination numbers in Queensland. There's only about 50,000 that have been used so far when 100,000 were available. And now you've got this nurse who was unvaccinated that may well be infected by COVID. Who's to blame here?
Well, look, the federal government, Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt promised that 3 million Australians would be vaccinated by the end of March. We're going to struggle to be 350,000 by the end of March, which is only in a couple of days. That is an epic fail. And the government can hold all the press conferences at CSL it likes, but it can't hide from the fact that it was slow out of the block. We were 70th in line to negotiate contracts. They're not being honoured. We've now got the CSL facility coming on, but those promises the government have made about the level of vaccination have epically failed, and they should be called out on this. And Anastasia Palaszczuk is right to say, well, what the hell is going on? You promised 3 million.
All right, and as you can see, that's breaking news this morning. The unvaccinated nurses to be banned, I should say, moving forward. Stephen, we're out of time. Good to chat, though. We'll talk to you soon.
Good to talk.